Hello everyone, Jules here. Today I'd like to do a video about the Thoth Tarot, and I want to talk about my approach to the Thoth Tarot and what I do and don't do with the Thoth Tarot. And I'm just going to show one of my copies of the Crowley Thoth Tarot here. This is the blue box version that is published by A.G. Mueller. It's also known as the Swiss version. So I quite like this version of the deck. And you can also get a larger green box version that's published by Samuel Weiser Publishing. Now, what I want to talk a little bit about in this video is some particular approaches to the Thoth deck. Now, just to start with, I want to point out the origin of the Thoth Tarot system. It is based on the Book of Thoth, and a lot of people know that as the book written by Aleister Crowley, and this is the book that was written for his deck. And a lot of people think that the Book of Thoth originated with Aleister Crowley. Well, it actually didn't. This book was written in 1944. It was not published till about 1969. And this Book of Thoth is actually based on a much earlier Book of Thoth. That was the original Book of Thoth that was written by Samuel Mathers, who was one of the three founders of the Golden Dawn. So a lot of people think that Aleister Crowley wrote the original Book of Thoth. This is a much later version of the Book of Thoth, and it is an extended commentary on the Book of Thoth. But the basic system was already in place with the Golden Dawn when it was founded in 1888. So you can see that this book was published in 1944, and Aleister Crowley began to elaborate on the Book of Thoth and write an extensive commentary from about 1912. He first published a commentary on the Book of Thoth in 1912 in one of his Equinox magazines from his own order. So I wanted to clarify that first of all, because a lot of people think that Aleister Crowley was the original writer of the Book of Thoth. So this is his later commentary on that book. And if I can just show you a cover page of the original Book of Thoth, which was written by Samuel Mathers. And it was actually called Book T, as in T for Thoth. And here is a photocopy of the cover page. And it actually says Book T up here. So if I can just show you this. So this is from an original version of the Book T, or Book of Thoth by Samuel Mathers. And if you compare that to a later version from Aleister Crowley's Order, the OTO, you can see the similarity of the same symbol from the Book of Thoth, or Book T by Samuel Mathers. And the other thing I want to talk about as well is the tarot spread that is known as the opening of the key spread. And the spread, of course, comes from the Book of Thoth. So it is mentioned in Crowley's book, but it is not called the opening of the key in this book or in Book T or Book of Thoth by Mathers. It's not actually called that. In this book, there is an appendix in the back of the book, and it is actually referred to as a chapter called Behaviour of the Tarot, and it is a chapter about divination, and that has the instructions for the spread in this book. But it's not actually called the opening of the key spread in this book, and it's not called that in the original book by Mathers. He actually says here, I'll just give you another enlarged version of the Book T by Mathers. It actually says here, including a method of divination. Including a method of divination. So that's what Mathers actually called it when he wrote the Book of Thoth. He just called it a method of divination. That's what he called it. And it's called Behaviour of the Tarot in Crowley's version. The title of the spread, Opening of the Key, comes from the first part of the spread, and it is divided into 4 or 5 different segments or sections, and they're called operations. So the first operation for the spread is called the opening of the matter, and the matter being anything that you want to ask for your tarot reading. So that is how the opening of the key title or name really started, and I think it was used within the order, but it's not actually called that in the Book of Thoth or in Book T. So the Book of Thoth or Book T, as Samuel Mathers originated that, he came up with the tarot spread, he came up with all of the Golden Dawn correspondences. Everything was in place by the time Crowley joined the order in 1898. He joined the order 10 years after the order was founded in 1888. So that is why Book T or Book of Thoth was already well and truly written and set out and organised by the time Crowley joined the order 10 years after it was founded. But Crowley's own book is an extended commentary on the Book of Thoth, and he also changed a few things as well by that time, by the later period. But the basics and fundamentals of the Golden Dawn tarot correspondences and the opening of the key spread and everything in that regard, as far as Qabalah is concerned, was already well and truly in place when Aleister Crowley joined 10 years later. Now, I wanted to do that little bit of introduction before I talk about my approach to the Thoth Tarot, just to give you a bit of background on some of these things, because there's a lot of people out there who are a bit intimidated or overwhelmed by the Thoth Tarot, and you hear different things about how different people use the deck and approach the deck, and some people are Thoth purists and they want to follow the Book of Thoth completely the way that Crowley has written his book. But I personally, I do not use the opening of the key spread. For me, it is very drawn out and cumbersome. There are too many parts to the spread. It just takes a really long time to do the opening of the key spread. I don't do that. I am also not interested in elemental dignities. Even as an astrologer, I'm not all that interested in elemental dignities. There is a counting method to do with the opening of the key spread. Neither of those things. I'm not interested in counting cards. I'm not interested in elemental dignities. So, my approach to the Thoth Tarot is basically and purely in regard to Hermetic Qabalah. Because what is stressed with the Golden Dawn and with Crowley in his book is that the Golden Dawn Tarot, which is the Thoth Tarot system, is completely and essentially based on Hermetic Qabalah. So I approach the Thoth Tarot purely from a Hermetic Qabalah approach when I am using the deck. Whether that is for contemplation, spiritual development, or a tarot reading, I am always approaching the Thoth Tarot from a Hermetic Qabalah perspective. So, just getting that out of the way, I now want to just do a little book recommendation for anyone who is saying, oh, okay, well, now I'm thinking of approaching and using the Thoth deck, and whether that is, the Crowley Thoth in particular. Otherwise, there is the Hermetic Tarot, which is very, very similar too. The book I'm recommending is The Thoth Companion by Michael Osiris Snuffin, and I have talked about this on my channel before, and I have got a playlist on my channel of the Thoth Tarot and Thoth books, and I have also got a playlist of Tarot and Qabalah as well. But this is the most basic book. This is an absolute beginner's book in regard to the Thoth Tarot. It is basically from a Hermetic Qabalah perspective, but it is presented in quite an accessible way. And of course, this book does not mention the opening of the key spread at all. So you can see that you can actually use the Thoth Tarot. There's actually a number of books that do not mention specifically the opening of the key spread, and they may not even put all that much emphasis on the elemental dignities either. So you can well and truly use the Thoth Tarot without the opening of the key spread. And I think one way of putting it is insisting or suggesting that using the Thoth Tarot is dependent upon the opening of the key spread is a bit like saying, oh, well, you can't use the Rider-Waite Tarot unless you use the Celtic cross spread. And as you know, there are many, many spreads that you can use with the Rider-Waite, the Waite-Smith deck. You do not have to use the opening of the key spread with the Thoth deck. The only thing that I do recommend with the Thoth deck, and I think this is an essential, and that is to get a basic understanding of Hermetic Qabalah in regard to the Thoth deck whenever you are using it or approaching it or learning about the Thoth deck. Because as Crowley had said in the introduction to his book, and it should be well known about the Golden Dawn in general, that the Golden Dawn regard to the tarot is essentially based on Hermetic Qabalah. But if you start with a book like this, you can get a basic foundational understanding of Hermetic Qabalah and the deck. And I have also got on my playlist for Tarot and Qabalah, there are some more basic books to understand Hermetic Qabalah as well. If you have a look at that playlist as well on Tarot and Qabalah, and look at the more basic books that I recommend, and you can get some basic understanding with this book as well. So that's a few of my thoughts on my approach to the Thoth Tarot, and as I was saying, I just wanted to make a few points about all that, because I think a lot of people, if they are considering learning about the Thoth Tarot and beginning to use it, I think they can be a bit put off by the idea that there are all of these additional things that are requirements for using the Thoth Tarot. And I'm the sort of person who I have found over the years that approaching things in a more basic way, you are actually not overloading yourself with too much information, especially when you are beginning to learn something. And I have found also over the years with tarot and with astrology that in a lot of ways less is more, because you need to tune in to the spiritual messages and your intuition. And if you are using too much thinking and too much intellect, it can actually get in the way of the spiritual messages and knowledge, spiritual wisdom, and the intuition. Because that is what tarot is also really about. So there are my thoughts on my approach to the Thoth Tarot. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.